The rain had been falling since dawn, the kind of cold, unforgiving rain that seeps into your considered courage and makes you question every decision that brought you to this moment. Emily stood at the iron gates of the grand estate, her thin jacket clinging to her skin, her shoes soaked through. In her trembling hands was a simple tray, homemade pastry she had baked before sunrise, using the last of her flour and hope. On her hip rested her 4-year-old daughter, Lily, fast asleep, her tiny arms wrapped tightly around her mother's neck as if sensing the weight of the world pressing down on her. Emily hadn't planned to knock on this door. She had promised herself she never would. But hunger has a way of silencing pride, and desperation whispers louder than dignity. She took a deep breath, walked up the stone path, and rang the bell. Inside the mansion, Alexander Whitmore, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the city, paused mid-sip of his morning coffee. He wasn't expecting anyone. In fact, he avoided people. Wealth had given him everything except peace. Since the accident that took his wife and unborn child 3 years ago, Alexander lived behind gates, glass, and silence. He approached the door with irritation, already rehearsing a polite dismissal. But when he opened it, the words vanished from his mind. Standing before him was a woman drenched in rain, eyes steady yet exhausted, holding a sleeping child and a tray of pastries like an offering. She didn't look like a beggar. She looked like someone who had once lived a decent life and lost it piece by piece. "Can I sell you a pastry, sir?" Emily asked softly, her voice calm but fragile, like glass stretched too thin. Alexander stared at her, then at the child, then at the pastries. Something twisted painfully in his chest. Memories he kept buried clawed their way to the surface, his wife standing in their kitchen, flour on her cheek, laughing as she baked on rainy mornings just like this. He should have said no. He should have closed the door. Instead, he stepped aside without realizing it. "Come in," he said quietly. Emily hesitated, unsure if she had heard him right. "You're soaking wet," he added. "At least let the child sleep somewhere warm." Inside, the house was silent, vast, and intimidating. Emily stood awkwardly, afraid to drip water onto the polished floors. Alexander brought towels, a blanket, and tea. He didn't ask questions at first. He watched Lily sleep peacefully on the couch, completely unaware of how close her world had come to breaking. When Emily tried to explain herself, he raised a hand. "You can tell me later," he said. "First, eat something." She broke down then, quietly, ashamed of the tears she couldn't stop. No one had spoken to her with kindness in months. As the rain continued outside, Emily told her story. How her husband had died in a factory accident. How the company denied responsibility. How debt swallowed their small apartment. How family disappeared when she needed them most. Baking had been the one thing that brought her peace, and now, it was the only way she could keep her daughter fed. Alexander listened in silence, his heart pounding. This wasn't charity knocking at his door. This was life, raw, unfair, and cruel. When Emily finally finished, she stood up quickly. "Thank you for the tea," she said, forcing a smile. "I should go. I still need to sell the rest." Alexander looked at her for a long moment, then said the words that would change all their lives forever. "You're not leaving." She froze. "What?" He took a breath, as if making a decision he'd been avoiding for years. "You and your daughter are going to live here." Emily laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. "Sir, I can't." "You can," he interrupted. "And you will. No contracts. No conditions. I have more space than I need, and more silence than I can bear." His voice softened. "This house hasn't felt like a home in years." That night, Emily and Lily slept in a warm bed for the first time in months. Emily didn't sleep much. She expected to wake up and find it all gone. But morning came, and so did breakfast. Days turned into weeks. Emily cooked, cleaned, and baked, not as obligation, but as healing. Lily laughed in the halls where no child's laughter had existed for years. Alexander found himself smiling again, talking again, living again. But the world doesn't allow happiness without testing it. Whispers began. Neighbors judged. Rumors spread. Gold digger. Schemer. Emily heard them all and offered to leave. Alexander refused. People talk, he said. Let them. I know the truth. When an old business rival tried to dig into Emily's past to humiliate Alexander publicly, he stood firm. She's not my weakness, he said. She's the reason I remember why I built all this in the first place. One evening, as Emily baked pastries for a charity event Alexander was funding, she looked at him and finally understood something powerful. This wasn't about rescue. This was about two broken lives choosing to heal together. She hadn't sold him a pastry that day. She had unknowingly knocked on a door that led them both back to life. And if this story touched your heart, if you believe kindness can change destinies and one small decision can rewrite an entire future, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. These are the stories that remind us why hope still matters, and you won't want to miss the next one.